Good evening, Houdat Nation, and happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is having a wonderful week and a wonderful summer now that we're past the midway point. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is my partner in crime, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, I didn't forget your name. I was just trying to think of something smart ass to say it, and I came up blank.
I'm still home. That's different. I got back in last night, so we're on a streak now, right? We're on a streak of consecutive weeks. I'm actually home. So no, everything's good. Everything's good. Not a whole lot of crazy Saints news. Some roster moves. If you're into Madden ratings came out, so that's always a fun thing to speculate about. But other than that, life's pretty good. I hope the same for you guys, and hopefully the weather's been nice enough for you guys to go out up there and do something.
It has been. The boy, our little guy, he's at the age where he just wants to stay inside all day and play his video games. So getting him out of the house, whether it's to the pool, the playground, it feels like it takes the reverse jaws of life. But we're working on it. We're less than a week away from going to hitting our big beach trip. So we're excited for that. And of course, most exciting, there's football back in the air. New Orleans Saints rookies reported yesterday on Tuesday. We do have some news, as Brendan alluded to a moment ago. The veterans report next Tuesday, July 25th, with the first official practice being Wednesday the 26th. It's not in pads. And the first practice open to the viewing public will be July 28th. So I believe that's next Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're right. Friday. Almost positive it's Friday, but we'll double check all that. But yeah, football in the air. I guess this is another thing of news as I go through and say hello to a lot of you guys here in the comments. We didn't really touch on it last week, so I guess we'll touch on it now before we get into biggest news of the week. Is the Saints avoided what's been the kiss of death for a lot of teams over the years, and that's HBO's Hard Knocks.
Yes.
I was never really concerned with the Saints landing on Hard Knocks, and the only reason for that was because of the Aaron Rodgers trade to New York. If that trade never happened, probably would have been a little concerned because the Saints would be kind of in that boat where it's a trade or sign for a big name free agent to come in and be the quarterback of the future, and the drama surrounding Alvin Kamara and this and that. I could have definitely seen the media be attracted to that. However, Aaron Rodgers, he's in the media every offseason for one reason or another. Bob is clearly his biggest fan, has made that a point over the years. But as soon as he got dealt to the Jets, I knew that's exactly where HBO wanted to be. I mean, at the end of the day, if HBO gets their picking out of the four teams that were eligible, two things. Aaron Rodgers, first and foremost, but second, New York. Of course you want cameras in New York. So I think the Saints really avoided, like I said, the kiss of death, because the last thing you want, and I do want to talk about this just a little bit, Bob, given we both do work in the media, we have both been around cameras in our lives, whether that's been playing sports, covering sports, this, that, and the other. One of the worst things that can happen is when an outsider, for lack of a better term, comes into a locker room.
Yeah.
And is just kind of monitoring everything that goes on. It's not everybody's had this experience, but very similar to when there is an NCAA investigation or an investigation by the league, and then all of a sudden you have, dark glasses and suits around all the time, and you're like, I can't say or do anything. It's the same way when you get cameras in HBO or whoever in your facility recording every single thing that happens. And I know I don't have to reiterate this to you guys because all of our viewers are beautiful, smart people that clearly understand that everything you see on Hard Knocks, that's not every ounce of everything that gets recorded. There's so much editing. There's so many things that go unseen. And just like any reality TV, they want to frame things a certain way. So, oh, this doesn't really fit. Let's throw it over here. But this does fit, so let's make sure we put it right here. The timeline, it creates unnecessary drama. And in a way, it makes the 90-plus players that are on the roster fighting for their roster spot lives, it makes it a little uncomfortable because you don't ever feel like you can truly be yourself.
Yeah.
Whether that's on the field, whether that's off the field, whether that's with your teammates in the locker room, this, that, and the other. And especially in a situation in New Orleans where it does kind of feel like Dennis Allen is on the hot seat, right? There's no more excuses for DA. You have a new quarterback. You have all these little pieces still trying to connect and find their groove. The last thing you want is all those cameras in your facility. So I really think the Saints dodged a bullet.
Yeah, big time. I agree with you. And like you, I was never really overly worried because unless Aaron Rodgers said to these people, "You're not allowed here," that they were coming to New York from the second Aaron Rodgers was traded there. But I'll tell you. Unless I am someone like Aaron, pay attention to me, Rodgers, as a player, I wouldn't like this at all. Not whatsoever. As a coach, I would absolutely detest it. All it is extra distraction, for a life, for a sport that's full of distractions in the first place. Now, and this is what I would say to my players if I was a coach, and to my teammates if I was a player. Listen, we're still here to do a job. It shouldn't matter who is here and who isn't here. You need to do your job. You need to your teammates need to do their jobs. But at the end of the day, a distraction is still a distraction. And bigger ones in particular, they add up, and they do take a toll on a player and on a team. Even though I am a member of the media, and even though I am a fan that enjoys watching this kind of stuff, although I honestly have never watched one single minute of Hard Knocks, any year it's been on. But even as a member of the media, even as a fan of the sport, I'm glad that Hard Knocks is not going to be associated with the New Orleans Saints this season. Having said that, when the rookies did officially report yesterday, there was some quick news out of New Orleans Saints camp that you got the most paranoid Saints fan out there. Read between the lines, you guys on social. Some of you guys on social media sent you running for the hills. 4 Saints rookies are not going to be practicing, at least at the onset. 3 of them. Running back Kendre Miller, wide receiver A.T. Perry, wide receiver Shaq Davis. They're on the NFI list, the non-football injury list. 2 others, offensive lineman Nick Saldiveri and cornerback Anthony Johnson. They're on the physically unable to perform list. Now, what's that mean for folks? Well, if you tuned in to Alan Ulrich and I on Under the Dome last night, I gave a quick explanation, as did we in our article on the Saints News Network yesterday afternoon. Here's another synopsis. The NFI, non-football injury list, that's typically used for players that have suffered an injury that did not occur in an NFL facility. In other words, in the cases of these 3 rookies, they were injuries suffered towards the end of the college season, that they're still rehabbing from. By the way, you also see guys, if they've gotten in a car accident in the off season, and are still recovering from that, stuff like that. That's what the non-football injury list is. They can be activated from it at any point in time as soon as they're medically cleared. The PUP list, physically unable to perform list. That works. The average fan just thinks they hear PUP list and they think, oh, they're out for 4, they're out for 6 games. Not at this stage of the summer. the physically unable to perform list is similar. It typically reserved for players that have suffered injuries in OTAs, mini camp, maybe during the draft process, during the combine or what have you. But as long as they're put on the PUP list during training camp, they, like the NFI list, they can be activated off of it at any point in time after being medically cleared. You also see players that come into camp overweight put on the PUP list as well. The only time that automatic X number of games come into play is when you start the regular season on the physically unable to perform list. Now that used to be you're out and automatically out for 6 games. They amended that. Now it's a minimum of 4 games that you're out. Now the caveat is you can only be put on the PUP list 1 time per year. So in other words, Nick Saldivari, Anthony Johnson, they're on it now, assuming they're going to be activated off of it, and their injuries are minor from what we're hearing. Assuming they're going to be activated off of it during training camp or the preseason, if they were hypothetically to re-injure themselves, they would not be able to be placed back on the PUP list. The Saints would either have to place them on injured reserve, be it short term or for the season, or just leave them sitting on the sidelines until they're healthy. PUP list is now off of the table for Saldivari and Anthony Johnson from here on out.
Great explanation. I think the one thing to touch on, and you did do a great job of explaining the non-football injury list. For a guy like Kendre Miller, we knew and we have known that there was an injury, that he wasn't a full participant in any point of mini camp, any point of rookie camp. Mm-hmm. Did have some moments where he was able to put the brain bucket on, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're not in full pads. It's really just the helmet, and he was able to go through some walkthroughs and this and that, which is encouraging. But we knew there was an injury there. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, there is not a long turnaround for these guys. You might be sitting here going, Brendan, like, what are you talking about? January to July, that's a long time. Not for some of these rookies, because they're playing, depending on the player. A guy like Kendre Miller's playing national championship. That goes into January. And then you have the draft in April. So it's really not that much time. Mm-hmm. And they're going through pro days and doing this and doing that. So at the end of the day, they're still going to pro days. They're still doing the combine through injury. There is not a lot of time to rest up and recover. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Maybe not this season, so you might have to rewind the tapes to last season. NFL facilities, NFL trainers, NFL doctors, forget NFL, any pro sport, the best type of athletic care you're ever going to receive in your entire life. Mm-hmm. And it is a true blessing for these players when they get to the point where they get that type of attention on a daily basis. So let's not overreact. If the doctors, the best medical athletic doctors in the world, are going, you know what? Let's stay off that for another 2 weeks. Just take it. Because at the end of the day, does it really hurt some of those guys' chances of making the team? No, not really. Not at all. Because at the end of the day, they're all going to be participants, we hope, in training camp at some point. The PUP list, that might be a little bit different depending on the severity of the injury. But especially for the non-football list, we're going to see every single one of those guys in the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
In pads, ready to go in the preseason, because that's right around the corner too, in August. So yeah, there's really nothing to sweat here. I know anytime you see roster moves and the Saints injury history over the last 2 years, and you see injury and roster moves, you freak out a little bit. But these are really nothing to worry about. Like I said, we're going to see every single one of these guys within the next 2 weeks in pads, ready to go. For some of you that are going to be in New Orleans and be at training camp, you're definitely going to see them. You're going to get your chance to get your autographs, get your photos. They're all going to be there. So there's really nothing to worry about at this point. With that said, there is some positive rookie news. Bob, pick of the week. So let's go ahead and hit it. Isaiah Foskey is finally officially There's a lot of different ways we can go with this. He's officially a New Orleans Saint. Finally, I guess is the way that
There we go.
Obviously, second-round draft pick out of Notre Dame, the defensive end. There was a long holdup on getting the contract signed. Now, Bob, over the years, the NFL and the NFLPA have done a really good job of making the draft process simple for all parties, especially when negotiating contracts. Because if you're drafted between here and here, you're making this much money. If you're drafted between here and here, you're making this much money. So the average fan or someone who does not fully understand the ins and outs of the latest collective bargaining agreements and how things are changing year in and year out when it comes to manipulating the salary cap, getting guys paid, trying to retain rookies. Like that's something that over the last 10 years across essentially the big four sports here in the U.S. has become extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. You're seeing teams that go, I draft a guy and I can't retain him 4 years later. So what was the holdup with Isaiah Foskey, and how has the changes in the CBA and the changes of how rookie scale contracts have been over the last 10 years, how has that played a really major part in the delay in getting Foskey under contract?
Well, Brendan, we weren't hearing anything official, but my hunch, and there were a lot of rumors that's confirmed this the whole time. My hunch was that the hang up with Foskey was the signing bonus and the guaranteed money. Not necessarily how much it was, which has yet to be reported, but when he was going to get it. Foskey's representatives reportedly have wanted their client, Isaiah Foskey, to receive, I don't know how much, but at least a portion of his guaranteed money in year 3 of his contract. Now, that's significant because with a lot of these draft picks, like you said, the overall salaries are slotted. They're 4-year deals. First rounders have the option to have a fifth year option picked up by the team. But other than that, they're 4 years. The signing bonuses and guaranteed money, they're pretty similar according to where your draft slot was, like you suggested. But the hang up with a lot of second round draft choices this year, and there's still several out there that have yet to sign, and even some of the first rounders that have yet to sign, is when they're getting their signing bonus. A lot of these guys are wanting that guaranteed money pushed back. But what that's doing, why teams are going to be resistant to that is, especially for second, third round picks, if they underperform, if that player underperforms in year 1, after year 1, year 2, you can get rid of them going into year 3 with very little to no effect on your salary cap. That changes a lot if now all of a sudden a chunk of that guaranteed money gets pushed back to year 3 or perhaps even year 4. That it's not so much for first round picks because teams are not going to give up on first round choices within the first 2, even 3 years. Second, third round picks, that's a little bit different. The teams are a little bit more quickly to move on from them, as we've seen in recent years. Maybe not an outright release, but maybe look to move them via trade, things like that. Makes it a lot more difficult if a player, Foskey or anybody else, if an Isaiah Foskey is getting the bulk of his guaranteed money in year 3, that means the New Orleans Saints would still be on the hook and would still count against his salary cap, their salary cap, whether he was on the team or not. So that was the hang up. Again, I have heard no official numbers on Isaiah Foskey's 4-year deal. That will probably come out within the next handful of days. But that's just my hunch on why the delay took place.
At the end of the day, you have to remember this when it comes to players that just get drafted and the age that they are and the life-changing money that comes along with being an NFL draft pick. Talking about life-changing money, for you guys that do, don't forget to get your lottery tickets. Got a lot of money on the table between the Mega and the Powerball, so take care of yourselves. If you win, Remember your favorite podcast host.
Take care of yourselves, yeah, but take care of your favorite Bayou Blitz host too.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of life-changing money that comes into this, and for a 22-year-old, 21-year-old, to be told, hey, that huge signing bonus you're going to get that's going to pay for mom's new house or mom's new car, we're actually going to push that back in your contract. Or, hey, you're not going to get as much money up front as you once thought. You got to think these guys have to look after themselves too, because it takes one bad turn on turf and you're done for good. So these guys want to make sure that they're getting their money. The agents want to make sure that their clients are getting money. And because their clients are getting money, the agents are getting money as well. So everybody wants to make sure that they're paid. Obviously, the team wants, a return on their investment, essentially. They want to see them perform before, they get money. They want to make sure they're making good life choices in years 1 and years 2 and not, I hate to throw this team under the bus, but not having a Las Vegas Raiders situation where you spend a first-round pick and 2 years later they're gone for whatever reason it may be, whether it's criminal or whether it's just making dumb choices, right? Because at the end of the day, it sounds terrible to say because they're people, right? Athletes are people.
Some of them.
Okay, well, there's Bob's quote of the day. Some athletes are people, others may not be. It's a business, right? And it's a return on your investment. So this is a lot of teams now looking at it and going, well, I want to make sure that you're actually on my roster in 3 years. I want to make sure you're on my roster in 4 years. And if you get to that point and you're smart and you're productive and you stay healthy, then you're going to get paid. And I'm sure there's some details in this contract that say, your full signing bonus may be this number, but every year you get a chunk of it or whatever it may be. Like, that contracts like this are so well written for everybody involved. But the hang-up was never a situation like – and this is the one thing I want to get across, and Bob did a great job of explaining all of it, but this wasn't a hold-up like the John Elway situation or the Eli Manning situation where it's like, I don't want to play for the team that picked me. That was never in the cards, right? It was never about base salary because all that stuff's written out in the CBAs. Like Bob said, it was really just the secondary parts of the contract and making sure guys are getting the money that they think they deserve and when they want it. And that is a big holdup. But Foskey wasn't the only second-round pick, third-round pick to be held up on some of those things, Bob. There's a lot of second, third-round picks that were signed late, still remain unsigned. And a lot of this hold up for many players, and I think it's going to become a little bit of a trend over the years because of the direction that we're going. It's going to be because of that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I mean, people are all, and this goes outside the realm of sports. It goes through life. People are always trying to figure out a way around the system, and the system is always trying to figure out a way to keep the individual, not under wraps. But keep the individual compartmentalized so that way the system wins. One is always trying to defeat the other. That has been the case since the beginning of time, and that will remain the case until the end of time. So we will in the next CBA agreement, which I believe is 2 years from now. In the next CBA agreement, we will probably see drastically different language for these rookie contracts yet again. Because once these players are starting to find a way to kind of get one over on the system, so now it's the system's turn to try to fight back.
And that's the fun part of all of this. And I say fun very loosely. It's very sarcastic. And this is how we end up having lockouts and strikes, this, that, and the other, because at the end of the day, like I said before, it's a business, and dudes want to make sure that they are paid and taken care of. So that was the biggest news of the week. Isaiah Foskey officially a New Orleans Saint. I want to circle back, though, Bob, to Hard Knocks and the Saints avoiding it. And just a little note. we talk about Hard Knocks and it being such a negative thing towards teams. I want to flip that for a moment. It can be a really positive thing for guys that are roster bubble players because then they become fan favorites and they get cut by their team, they get picked up by another team. But I want to talk about it this way and looking at the Saints and the Jets, two teams that are coming off bad seasons, two teams that are going to be in different situations with a quarterback than last season, and two teams that in a way are looking to compete for a playoff spot immediately next year. What are some pros to being on Hard Knocks when you're in not quite a rebuild year, but like a retool year? And what are the negatives of being on Hard Knocks? So essentially, what positive things do the Jets have coming? And what are some negative things that you feel the Saints completely avoided on that? Because I think we focused a lot on the negative and not enough on the positive aspects of potentially, getting publicity, because there's no such thing as bad publicity, right, Bob?
I know the saying. I will personally disagree with it, but I get it. But listen, the publicity for the Jets will be a good thing. It gives the lesser players a little bit added exposure. Especially for the bubble players, like you said, that might not make the Jets roster. Now, with the release of Hard Knocks, coming when it is, that a player that would get hypothetically cut from the New York Jets wouldn't necessarily get signed on with another team because of their exposure to Hard Knocks. But it wouldn't hurt once this is seen later into the season. If this guy is, say, on the Jets practice squad or picked up on another team's practice squad, it's that much more film, not only on field, which Hard Knocks actually shows. It doesn't show a whole lot of, but how that player conducts himself, in interviews, handles himself around teammates, veterans, and other rookies alike, and that could make a difference in whether an opposing general manager or opposing coach might see that and say, you know what, he's a good locker room guy. We already have tons of film on him from college, and however many years he might have spent in the NFL before that. Now this gives us a little bit more insight, towards not only how he interacts with teammates and coaches inside the locker room, but how he handles the pressure of a pain in the ass reality TV show, as well. In other words, it's more of an insight into the character, of a player. So, for many of the individual players for the Jets, particularly the roster bubble guys and guys at the back half of the roster, the exposure, I believe, can be a good thing for them. Other than that, New York is a media circus, as you alluded to earlier, as every one of us knows, if you follow really any professional sport. But the Jets have been an organization, a franchise that's been down for a long, long time. I don't know what their ticket sales are like. I don't know what their merchandise sales are like. Personally, I don't care, but a lot of Jets fans probably do. The Jets organization certainly does, because again, business is business. Exposure like a reality TV show like this, like Hard Knocks or something of the like, that gives you more exposure. Bringing Aaron Rodgers in would certainly boost season ticket sales and boost merchandise sales. I would think so, but in the line of thinking, if you believe the line of thinking is, no publicity is bad publicity, then again, additional exposure, you could see and probably will see a slight uptake in merchandise sales, not only with Aaron Rodgers jerseys, but other New York Jets memorabilia, things like that. And honestly too, other players that will be watching this, other players from other organizations, say prospective free agents for next year, you get a little bit of an insight. Again, it's a jaded, twisted reality show insight, but it's still an insight towards the coaches and the ownership front office for the New York Jets. So when you become a free agent, potentially in 2024, if the Jets come a calling or your agent comes calling them, assuming all this coaching staff is still going to be in place next year, obviously, it gives you a tiny bit of insight there as well. So yeah, I mean, as far as the positives that the New York Jets can take from this, there are some for sure.
Let's go ahead and take some questions from you guys. I love doing that. We'll start with this one because we were talking about rookies, so we'll keep it going. Why is it the players who have good years in college don't always translate to the pros? There's a lot of reasons for that. And I saw your comment right after that about Ian Book, who was a good college quarterback that didn't quite, pan out in the pro level. I think quarterback is a completely different animal than any other position we could talk about when it comes to the NFL game. But one of my favorite examples for this is, and always will be, Stephon Anthony, which a lot of people are like, oh, don't say that name. But he was one of the most athletic linebackers, at least at that time, that a lot of scouts had seen on tape. Obviously, was a little too early for those national championship years at Clemson, but was definitely one of the big parts of Clemson regaining national powerhouse levels, was a big part of all that and was very successful in his years playing linebacker there. And though the tape stood out and how athletic the dude was, the one knock on him was between the ears and the processing motor there. And in college, because the game is slower, you're playing against weaker competition. And that's not discrediting the ACC, but that means that Clemson plays teams like my alma mater that are in the FCS for a reason, right? You're able to kind of hide some of that lack of quickness in breaking down what's going on in front of you with your athletic ability. Your athletic ability hides a lot of the between the ears problems there may be, or just lack of general knowledge of the game. And Stephon Anthony had a good NFL career as a special teamer after it became evident that he couldn't be a starting middle linebacker, right? You had those years, 2-3 years in New Orleans where, and then he had some special team years, went to Miami, came back to New Orleans, and you kind of went, when I say good, but at the end of the day, the dude spent more than 5 years in the NFL. For me, anybody that spends more than the average lifespan, 3 years, you had a good NFL career.
5 more years than I spent in the NFL. So yeah.
Exactly. So that's a guy that I point to and go, college was able to get away with it. I look at guys like, you brought up Ian Book, so let's talk about quarterbacks for a second. Ian Book's still in the league. He didn't play, but he was on a team that was in the Super Bowl last year and is returning to that team, so they obviously see value in him, at least being in the quarterback room. But you have guys like the Jamarcus Russells of the world. You have guys like the Ryan Leafs of the world. And it's not that those guys are not uber talented, right? I mean, everybody knows the video of Jamarcus Russell throwing the ball like 70 yards from his knees. The dude had all the arm strength in the world. But again, some of it, even more so at the quarterback position, is the game is so much faster. And if your brain can't process things and keep up, it's going to show mightily.
Yeah.
Some of it is in Ryan Leaf's case, and he has an incredible story. And if you guys haven't followed that story, it's incredible. He's really using his platform in a positive light now. And he's the first to admit that just being immature was a big part of it. Being a hothead was a big part of his lack of success at the next level. I think there's a lot of things that play into it. And I think we're really quick, and Bob kind of alluded to it when we were talking about Foskey and kids being young, and even myself still being, fairly young in my late 20s now.
Same here.
Right, exactly. Sorry, Bob. Right, you're in your late 20s as well. I think part of it too is just growing up, maturing, and we forget that I did stupid things when I was 21. Bob never did anything stupid at 21. Never.
If I can't remember doing the stupid things, do they count?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the if a tree falls, nobody's going to hear it. So yeah, there you go. Everybody does stupid things at 21. We forget these kids are like 21 years old when they got drafted. So that's kind of like a brief without getting into this whole thing about it. A lot of it's between the ears. I think that would probably be more than 50% of it is it being between the ears. Some of it's just, you're athletic in college and you're more athletic than people. And then everybody's just tall, quick, athletic when you get to the pro level. But I do think a lot of it's between the ears. Bob, you're the former coach. You're the Hall of Fame coach. You put your insight in on it.
That is a big factor. A lot of these guys, through high school, through college, they were always, if you'll pardon the expression, the big man on campus. They were just able to out-athlete everyone, to use a famous phrase by Barry Switzer. Once you get to the NFL, and don't get me wrong, the level of competition, both individually and as a team, it ramps up with each level. From high school to college, from college to pro, etc. And once some of these guys get to that NFL level where now guys are working their ass off all year round, learning little tricks of the trade. In fact, all they do, they become obsessed with what it takes to stay better or to keep their edge. If you don't have that kind of work ethic and you've only relied on your superior athleticism through high school and college, that's going to be exposed pretty quick when you get to the NFL. That's one way. Another way is scheme or position fit. Quarterback position is a great example, but not the only example. Is Zach Bond, for example. Zach Bond, very intelligent football guy. Very good athlete. Very hard worker, was a superior performer in high school, in college at Wisconsin. He gets to New Orleans. He's done nothing in his first 3 years because he's a poor fit for the Saints defense. It's that kind of thing. If you put a running quarterback in an offense where an offensive coordinator wants their guy to be very cerebral and stay in the pocket and go through progressions, that's a poor fit. If you take a very cerebral quarterback like Drew Brees and you thrust him into the Baltimore Ravens offensive system, where they ask Lamar Jackson to basically be an old school triple option style of quarterback, Drew Brees probably wouldn't have been the Drew Brees that we know and love. So, I mean, it's those kind of things. Sometimes injuries happen. It's a variety of things, like Brendan said. Those would be my top 3 or 4 reasons, why guys don't make it big in college, or do have it big in college and just kind of flop as pros. And some flatly because of maturity, intellect, whatever the case may be. Some just cannot handle the increased pressure that comes from going to college star, to the expectations of being, carrying an NFL franchise that's invested millions and millions of dollars in you.
Jerry also said, how did I forget this one? Stanley Jean-Baptiste, a guy who was a receiver that was making the transition to defensive back, and it never worked out, even though there was a lot of people that were really high on him because of his athleticism and making the position change and his height. It was bad. Elite says he's got to get you some jerseys of Jean-Baptiste and Stephon Anthony. It would be an exclusive. If you actually want to send Bob and I jerseys, even of absolute draft busts, I can speak for Bob. We will gladly take them.
I'll display them, yeah.
I am the guy that I could do anything when it comes to bad jerseys. We talked about this with our friends in Vegas. Like, what's the worst jersey that you own? And I said, I'm a Charlotte basketball fan. Don't even get me started on how many bad jerseys I own. Let's see, Elite. Bob, did you wear the numbers 9 and 56?
No, my volleyball numbers, my very first number in elementary school was number one, and that was through middle school as well. And then through the end of my high school career, I wore number three. I changed that to number two once in college, and I will not go back to number three because I'm not the same player. I wore a couple different numbers in different sports as well, 10, 11. Given my body, I'm a kind of a lean guy, so I think single digit numbers probably work best on me.
I'm trying to think all the numbers I wore. My first year of football, I wore 51 for Sam Mills, and I was playing O-line, so the number fit. And then I took 83 the next year because 51 was taken. 83 was my Nana's birthday, 8-3, so I just did that. Basketball, I wore 20. I was just given the number. Couldn't shoot like Ray Allen, though, so 20 didn't really work for me. But yeah, no, everybody's got a cool story when it comes to jersey numbers. It's actually one of my more favorite things to learn about when you get young guys coming in or guys that like pay money for a jersey number. So why is that number so important to you? Because there's a lot of cool stories behind all that. I wanted to get to one more, and I'm having to go back. There you are, Jerry. This is a good one. I think this is an interesting point as we get into training camp. And Bob and I will talk plenty more because training camp is going to bring a lot out. There's going to be a training camp battle for cornerback 2, which, we kind of touched on it a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was my weeks run together. But how bad the Saints' defensive backfield has been over the years, excluding Marshawn Lattimore, right? And the inconsistencies at cornerback 2. It's actually nice to have a legitimate training camp battle for that position because we talked about it. Ken Crawley, he had his moments, and I think he gets a lot of crap from Saints fans.
Mm-hmm.
He had his moments. He was really good at times for stretches, like 6 to 8 week stretches. Ken Crawley was good for New Orleans, and then you had Eli Apple, and again was good for a stretch, and then was burnt toast. Janoris Jenkins was good, but it wasn't a long term relationship. It was more like a summer fling for Jenkins and the Saints. And it just keeps going. And you could even go back, and I think we did go back to Keenan Lewis and Del and guys that, they were really good, but they had no help behind them.
Uh-huh.
So this is a nice change of pace for the Saints with a Debo and Alontae Taylor. I don't want to go on a huge discussion about it because I know we'll definitely talk about it here in July and in August. I would give my nod right now, just based off last season, to Alontae Taylor, who really proved himself in being an up-and-coming star at the position. Adebo struggled, sophomore slump. But that's not to say that I don't think Adebo is still a talented and vital piece to what the Saints want to do moving forward. But if I had to guess right now or give an edge to one guy, I definitely am going to give it to Alontae Taylor just because he had such a good year last year. And a lot of people have to bite their tongue because people were really questioning the pick when it happened. But he ended up being, at least in year one, he lived up to the billing.
Yeah, he did, and because of that, and just overall playing style, I would give a slight nod to Alontae Taylor. But hey, don't forget how well Paulson Adebo played the year before that as a rookie. He played very well, and also don't forget that Adebo started out the year dealing with a serious ankle injury, last year. That took him a while to kind of get his stride, and played better towards the end of the year. But the reason I think Alontae Taylor's rookie year was better than Paulson Adebo's rookie year, and here's why. Marshawn Lattimore missed 10 games last year, and during those 10 games, Adebo had stretches where he did play really well, but it was Alontae Taylor that was asked to oftentimes take on an opponent's best wideout, the exact role usually assigned to Marshawn Lattimore. And Taylor played well enough that this pass defense ultimately finished second in the NFL. Did not give up a 300-yard passer in their final 10 games. gave up only one 100-yard receiver in their final 10 games. And that one 100-yard receiver came against Marshawn Lattimore when Lattimore was back in the lineup. That's not knocking Lattimore at all. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sure it ultimately matters who wins the number 2 job between Taylor and Adebo, because they're both going to see the field a lot. They're both going to see extensive action, in slot coverage through training camp in the preseason, just to kind of round out their versatility, because that would only be a better thing for the defense. But if you ask me, and I've said this multiple times all offseason, and blasted national sites because of their disrespect, the Saints have the best trio of cornerbacks in the NFL. You cannot name me one better. You can name me one better, better teams that might arguably have the better duo of cornerbacks. There's a short list of players that could arguably be ranked above Marshawn Lattimore as the single best cornerback, but you can't look me in the eyes and convince me that there is any team with a better trio of cornerbacks than the Saints are going to have in Lattimore, Taylor, and Adebo. And then you throw in Bradley Roby to the mix. I mean, come on.
We talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago when the New Orleans Saints, at least by Pro Football Focus, weren't a top 10 group at running back. Very much so with the defensive backfield. I think the Saints are underrated, but I did want to bring this up because it just made me laugh because of what you said, saying, like, show me that there's another group. I talked about Madden ratings right at the top of the show and how interesting those can be. If you take the top 2 running backs from each team in the league and you get their median, like, Madden overall average, there's only one team above New Orleans.
Interesting. And
it's the Niners. And it's like 88.5 or something like that. And for the Saints, it's like 87. But the Saints aren't a top 10.
Right.
I'd be curious what the defensive backs are too.
And by the way, the Madden ratings they're unofficially official. As far as every player's rating. I do have that ready, and we'll be publishing for the Saints News Network tomorrow all the Saints individual ratings and where they rank as a team, where they're rated as a team compared to the rest of the NFC South as well.
There you go. Yeah, leaks are fun for especially sports video games. The one that I've been watching a little bit more is, there will no longer be a FIFA.
Really?
FIFA and EA Sports did not renew their contracting for licensing rights. So it's now going to be called EA Football Club. But all the teams in the world have agreed for the licensing rights, but FIFA as an organization has not given. So there's a lot of weird things going on there. But there has already been leaks of the game and overalls and everything. And it appears like for the first time in a long time, EA is listening to the consumers and what they wanted out of the game. FIFA has no control to say no.
Awesome.
It's like, win for the gamers. Let's go.
You'd never, ever see that kind of thing happen in the NFL.
No, because and that's the thing is when you have these giant billion-dollar corporations go, no, this is what we want out there for our game. So I'm curious to see if there's any other. Obviously, EA owns the rights to so many, but is there going to be another movement like that where it's like, well, can we get the licensing rights for aspects of it without all of it? And that becomes a whole thing, and it's a big legal battle. But let's go back to more comments. All right. I like this one. We can close out our last 10 minutes with this one. What do you think, Bob, Dennis Allen has learned about himself to make him a better head coach this season for New Orleans, excluding he's got his own coaches?
Learned about himself. Wow. That is a great way to phrase a question. I hope, and only Dennis Allen can answer this, and only Dennis Allen can answer this once to borrow the saying, once the bullets start flying for real. I hope that Dennis Allen has learned to manage game situations a lot better. I hope that Dennis Allen is far less conservative, especially in approving or disproving certain offensive situations. Going forward on fourth down, and things like that. Obviously, Pete Carmichael's responsible for the packages and the play calls. So, I would like to see a much more aggressive Dennis Allen on the sidelines in game situations, certainly better clock management. That should come with experience, but we shall see.
I think for me, the one thing that us in the media get hung up on, maybe even more so than the average fan, because it is a really convenient article to write. It's a really convenient headline or thumbnail or tagline to throw out there, is when you're making comparisons, right? It's so easy, and you and I handle the draft every year. So how easy is it? Well, let's take a look at their pro comparison.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy, and I think one thing that could be a really easy hang up, and you said aggression, and I liked that word, is, I want to see Dennis Allen be more aggressive. Yes, but I don't want him to be a Sean Payton clone in aggression, right? And I think it's really easy to be like, oh, well, the Saints had an ultra-aggressive play caller. The Saints had a really gutsy, ballsy type of head coach in terms of risk-taking. I don't want that. Right?
I'm going to interrupt you because I agree with you to a point. I don't want that necessarily, because that's not who Dennis Allen is. What I felt like watching and covering this team last year is that there were several situations where Dennis Allen almost seemed paralyzed with fear. That's what he needs to come out of. That's what a more aggressive Dennis Allen would be, just a more comfortable Dennis Allen. I don't want him to be out of his own comfort zone, though. So, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I felt like Dennis Allen, I just talked about Sean Payton being like a big-time risk taker, right? Like, Sean Payton gets dealt his cards. He doesn't even look at the cards. He goes, I'm all in. And you're like, what? You're going blind? No, don't do that. That's the type of play caller Sean he is, and we're going to see it in Denver this year. Dennis did too much of, he looked at his cards and he was like, I don't know. He had a 15 in blackjack, and he was like, I don't know what to do. Like, do I hit it? Do I stay put? What do I do? Like, and it was that kind of, use the word paralyzed. It was that type of indecisiveness and being unsure, and the lack of ability to just command the team.
Yeah.
That I saw from Dennis last year. I don't want him to be a big-time gambler like Sean. Like you said, I want him to be comfortable in his own skin, but I have to see more decisiveness and consistency. Not just game in and game out, but like play to play, drive to drive, series to series. Yeah. What made Dennis so great as a defensive coordinator is he was so sure of every aspect of everything. Right? I would have said 2-3 years ago, there weren't many defensive coordinators that were better than Dennis Allen, and there certainly weren't many, if any, that game planned as well as Dennis Allen, knowing counter move to everything. I need that type of mindset into Dennis Allen as the head coach.
Yeah.
And maybe having coaches around him will make him more comfortable, and being able to make those decisions and delegate responsibility to where he doesn't have to overthink what's going on offensively. Maybe that's what's going to happen. I don't know, but I saw too much of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to see that, and I think that's for anybody, right? And we're not just talking about football, like your boss or at your job or anything, your significant other in a relationship, when you're making a tough decision with your lives moving forward. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be like, I don't know. But at some point, somebody's got to be like, nope, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I felt like not just Dennis Allen, but a lot of the Saints coaching staff from a year ago, nobody could step up and say, this is exactly what we're doing. And at times it was like, I don't know who's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like. So, again, sorry, because I know you said without factoring in the fact that he's got his own coaches, I do think that's going to bring a level of comfort and make things a little bit easier. But all in all, I hope Dennis Allen has learned that he has to be decisive at every aspect, not just certain aspects. And also, it's really important for anybody in a high position in any organization, like I said, whether it's football, your business, work, whatever, it's really important to understand and be comfortable delegating things to other people.
Yep.
Because if you try to do everything by yourself, at some point you're just going to crumble and you're going to fall and you're going to fail. And it's okay to be for Dennis to go to one of his assistants and say, I really need you to handle this week. I really need you to handle this throughout the season. So hopefully those are the things Dennis Allen has learned, because ultimately the Saints roster is extremely underrated. And Bob and I have touched on that throughout the offseason. I actually think the Saints roster is pretty steady. There are holes, but I think across the board, it's a really talented roster of a playoff caliber team. So there's no excuse there. And if you have that there and you can kind of get your swagger back on the sideline, I think the Saints could only go up. Bob, before we close out, classic game of dot or drop. You're going to be going on vacation soon. I'm going to miss some time. We got to move some dates around. So let's make sure we do get in a dot or drop before schedules kind of get crazy, because you have to get some vacation time before the preseason, because you're going to be really busy. As soon as August hits, it's a whole new world for you and the Saints News Network.
Yeah, we're still coming. We're still coming to you weekly, guys. Brendan's work schedule might have to shift some dates around. Like he said, I will be on vacation starting at the end of next week. I'll be gone for almost 9 or 10 days. But I'll be doing the show from the beach. It's up to you guys whether you want to Bayou Blitz only fans or not. We'll put up we'll put up a poll next week to let you decide how Bob Rose is going to be dressed for your Bayou Blitz from the beach.
Shirtless Bob in red. So either way, as you're taking a drink too. Either way, it's gonna be like last year with the fireworks in the background, and Bob looks like he's just been tanning on the beach for 12 hours. But we're here for you guys every week. We make adjustments. Things happen. Things have to move around. Life gets hectic. You want time to just go to the beach, things like that. So, but yeah, dot or drop. I'll ask you this one. I mean, I think we've talked about this position a lot, and I think we will continue to talk about this position a lot. And it kind of ties in what we were talking about earlier with A.T. Perry landing on the non-football injury list. Do you see that negatively affecting his chances of making the team at all?
Believe it or not, I'm going to go drop because like we both stated about the non-football injury list where A.T. Perry is, at least this week. It's probably only going to be short term. We were hearing nothing about a specific injury, but we were hearing that it was quote unquote not a significant injury. So that's certainly good news. The reason why I said drop and that I don't believe that it will affect his chances to make the team is because he won't be on the NFI list that long. If the injury is that significant, what the Saints are going to do is what they typically do, with rookies, late round picks or undrafted guys, that they don't just want to cut and give an injury settlement to. They'll place them on injured reserve. We saw it. Caden Ellis, his rookie year, a few games into the year. We've seen it with Smoke Monday. We saw it with Blake Gillikin. So if this turns out to be a significant injury for A.T. Perry, one that could affect his chances to make the team, then the Saints will just place him on IR. So no, I don't think this early injury is not indicative, at least at this point, on whether he makes a team or doesn't.
Yeah, it's the old draft and stash. It is a loophole. Like, there's no denying that. It is a loophole of keeping guys on your team opposed to putting them on the practice squad and seeing if they get snatched up or, whatever the case may be. Because we've definitely seen the case where they end up on IR and out for the season. You're like, really? He just rolled his ankle. Like, that's
right.
What are you talking about? He's out for the season. Like, what do you do? Tear every ligament in his lower leg? Like, but and that it's just what happens. And Gillikin's a great example, a guy who had a minor injury that would have kept him out like 3 or 4 weeks. So like, nope, that's our punter of the future. So we're just gonna stash him.
Yep.
All right, hit me, daughter drop.
All right, my daughter drop. Everybody's talking about him, rightfully so. Expecting a bigger year from Tyrann Mathieu, who finished the year strong after an abysmal start. My daughter drop is dot or drop. Marcus May will have a positive and a much bigger impact on the New Orleans defense this year than he did last year.
I'll say dot. I mean, I think the only part of me that's going to handcuff my answer is we don't know if there's going to be a suspension or not. Right. And we talked about last week how difficult it can be going into a season and not knowing if you're going to get 2 or 3 games out of a guy like Alvin Kamara, and all of a sudden they get hit with a suspension. It's looking more like that for Marcus May, where we might get into the season before we actually get anything. I think it would be hard to do any worse, right?
My thoughts exactly.
The joke last year that I had with Marcus was I don't think I ever saw him play back-to-back games because of injury. That's not his fault. Injuries are a part of the game. Bob's going,
yeah.
But
injuries have become a trend for Marcus May,
right.
which is a concern of mine. Yeah,
that's a problem. I think he's going to be a positive impact. I don't know if it's going to be the ceiling that a lot of people expected, but I do think it's going to be positive. I do want to note on this with Tyrann Mathieu. It's a couple weeks late, but he did have an event down in New Orleans, obviously his hometown, a couple weeks ago. Like a youth football camp where he invited fellow teammates, past New Orleans Saints, guys that are local in the New Orleans area. So I just want to give a shout out. It's always great to see people giving back to their communities, whether they are from New Orleans or whether they are adopted by New Orleans playing for the New Orleans Saints. So I love seeing things like that. Last one, and we'll roll out, Bob. Dot or drop. And this is more of a fun one, because I saw it on Twitter. I don't even know who to give credit to. So whoever tweeted this, like, props to you. Dot or drop. The new Netflix show Quarterback would have been much better with Jameis Winston on it.
100% dot. First of all, I haven't started watching it yet, but I will. It's my understanding that Kirk Cousins is one of the main characters on it. What's that?
Marcus Mariota as well.
Yeah. I mean, come on. They must have been scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Now, Kirk Cousins is a character. I will say that. But it is. As far as a quarterback that I would want to emulate, or that I would want my son to emulate, Kirk Cousins is literally one of the last people on earth. So yeah, I mean, Jameis Winston undoubtedly is a colorful character, no doubt about that. There would have been. I would have loved to see the behind the scenes of what really happened post-injury for Jameis Winston last year, the conversations with the coaches, how he felt about it. We didn't hear a lot of that through the season because teams don't like controversy, especially mid-season. So yeah, I think the Jameis Winston saga would have been a very, very gripping story for that series.
Whoever tweeted it, they tweeted out the interview from last year when they were asking Jameis about injuries, and he's like, "Oh, I've learned my body's symmetrical. Like your wrists are your ankles," and like that whole like goofy thing. I was like, yeah, like having a guy that goofy on a Netflix show like that would have been a joy. So Bob, in conclusion, you have a lot of work coming out and a lot of work coming ahead of you here as we close out July. We get to training camp, we get to the preseason. Where can people follow all of your work that you're going to be doing from the beach as well?
Yeah, folks, and we as always appreciate your support. You can follow me individually, Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on Twitter. You can follow all of our work collectively on the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter, and we of course do the New Orleans Saints coverage for the SI.com team page as well. So check that out. Folks, as always, thank you for your support of your Bayou Blitz for Brendan and I, and continue to do that. Push this show weekly. Push it. Get more subscribers for the YouTube channel. Get more members for the Bayou Blitz Facebook page. Get more followers for the at Bayou Blitz Pod Twitter page as well. Thank you for everything that you've done for us so far. This is our first show into year 2 of production of the revised Bayou Blitz, and we're going to continue. We keep sitting on all these guests and everything that we have because we're waiting for one big announcement for you guys. I can't wait to give it to you, but I do have to wait to give it to you because it can't be official just yet.
Yeah, it's not quite officially official, right? We're still working out the signing bonus. We're just being Isaiah Foskey, right? We're still working out some of the little nuances, right?
Hey, at my age, though, I want my signing bonus up front, though.
Yeah, well, it's not even an age thing because I'm with you as well. Well, we're the same age, right? We're both 27 years old. So yeah, at our age, we both want our signing bonuses now. For me, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, still figuring out Threads, but it's all at BT Boylan. I appreciate all the support and love as we continue into year number 2. I'll throw this out there as well for something just kind of on my side as things are still being worked out, nuances, kind of like Bob and I with the announcement we want to give, but more of a personal announcement. Some of you know that my family has a nonprofit down in Georgia, and they started roasting their own coffee beans. I sent some to you last year for Christmas.
Yes.
So Georgia's weird, and they have these cottage food law license, and you're not allowed to, sell over state lines and whatnot. Work in process of getting a sort of warehouse to where my parents can distribute that wherever they want. And so as soon as that becomes official, I'll drop some links for you guys. And if that does become official, we will potentially be giving away some coffee in some of our giveaways as well. We do have a giveaway coming up. Bob and
if it doesn't become official, then cue up the Smokey and the Bandit theme song because you and I are bootlegging. We're bootlegging the coffee to our viewers.
There you go. We do have a giveaway coming up. We're going to kick it off for the start of training camp at that last week of July. So be checking out our Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod for that coming up. In the meantime, we will see you guys next Thursday. We'll put out a tweet to remind you all, you guys. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode of the Bayou Blitz podcast. I'll take the blame on that. Things happen. Schedule's got to be moved. It's never Bob's fault. Bob's
no. Hell no.
Out of the two of us, right? Man. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next week, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next week, next Thursday, for the Bayou Blitz podcast.